you gotta have that career, and you gotta stay busy, and you gotta achieve this and this and this, and your health doesn't matter that much. A lot of programs or approaches don't have like a good exit strategy. It's just starving yourself to death and then it rebounds. If we look, in the world today, uh, mediocrity is celebrated.
Welcome. Today we have with us Mauro Stara. Says you are the founder of something called the Six Pack CEO, which is an interesting title there. So tell us a little bit about who you are and maybe about that title, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to work in banking, and that was for 5.5 years, and then as I quit my banking job and transitioned full time into my online business, I started working, mentoring, coaching men that were similar, like me, usually a little bit older, in their 40s and 50s, but basically the same guys that I was working with in corporate. And I can go deeper into my own personal story, if you want to talk about that. But I saw the opportunity to lead the same guys that were facing the same challenges that I was facing. And fast forward, I niched it down and found that's the market that I'm able to help the most, and also enjoy working with the most.
So, and you said you had a bit of a personal journey. I guess we'll maybe start with there, because that usually, I find that with honestly, with everybody that's interested in this, whether it's a physician or someone else, they usually have a personal story that leads them in that direction, and it kind of wakes them up a little bit. So what was your sort of personal entrance into this world?
Yeah, there were multiple entrances. So the first one was in 2015. I was with two friends at a business seminar, and they presented like different career paths and opportunities that show like, hey, you can do this and you can become a manager and you can achieve these long-term career goals. And it kind of sounded great on paper, salary wise, and perspective wise, and it's often what society wants you to do. But something in me, like, there was a voice that said, I don't know. I don't really feel like that is the path. And I rejected that. And I wanted to be my own boss and do my own thing. So that was like the very first touch point that I had. And it led to me working with my first fitness client that I wrote him back then. It was just a workout program. And then in 2017, 2018, as I was working in banking and building a business and training people on the side, I was, sacrificing my sleep and putting my health a little bit on the side. And I burned myself out. And it got so bad to the point that I started having issues with my heart. And I walked into the office where the cardiologist was. And I saw a bunch of guys that were 60, 70 plus. And I was the only guy in my early 20s, and said, man, something is wrong. I should not be here. And, getting checked if I had a heart attack, and what's going on with my heart. And that's where I drew the line and said, okay, as enough is enough. And, I quit banking, went all in. And I saw that, again, I was not the only guy that had all these challenges because of, well, I don't want to blame social norms. So part of it is, hey, you got to have that career, and you got to stay busy, and you got to achieve this and this and this, and your health doesn't matter that much. It's all about, the financial goals and the piece of paper, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, but I guess the reality for many people, particularly executives, CEOs, people running startups, there's a lot of hard work. There's no getting around that. You're going to have to work longer hours in many cases. There's maybe you can. There'll be times where you just kind of have to press a little harder. How do you navigate that and still stay healthy? What have you found?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, initially you have to grind and really put in those hours before you can hire someone or outsource things. At the same time, I don't believe that that has to come. And again, I've seen it firsthand, and it's something I would do differently if I could go back in time. But I don't believe it has to come at the expense of your health. So depending where someone is in their stage, a lot of guys that come to us, they're usually in the end stage in terms of their career. They've got to the point where they want to be, and they have a lot more time. They've got a team, they've got the systems built out. But for someone that's just starting out or doesn't have that team or system or infrastructure built out, yes, you got to put in the hours, but you still want to make sure that you keep those non-negotiables with your health. So you can still make time to lift. Whether you drive into Starbucks or prep a meal or make a different food choice when you're in a restaurant with clients. Those are all choices that are still in your control, and you can have that minimum effective dose to still maximize your health, and that will in return give you better productivity, better performance, and overall better mental clarity in your business. So they go hand in hand. I think the big key is seeing them as one unit and not as separate things, that one comes before the other. Once I've done this, then I take care of that. No, they go hand in hand. Doesn't mean that you have to become a gym rat, but you still have to show up as your best self for your clients, your team, your family, whoever it is that you're dealing with or interacting with.
Yeah, and so you named I guess your company the Six Pack CEO, which I'm sure reference to having lean abs. Why that? Why was that name given?
Yeah, so the big milestone or like a big philosophy that we have is over the transformation of getting an elite body, which is why, or one of the main reasons why people come to us, is getting down to 10 to 15% body fat and setting a strong foundation to then put on muscle mass and get stronger, restripping away the fat. And ultimately, it's what success represents. So it's very clear that when you hear the name, you don't miss it. You know exactly, okay, this is what I'm getting, this I'm what I'm signing up for. It's not fit, it's not this, it's one clear cut target or first milestone that we aim for. And if we look in the world today, uh, mediocrity is celebrated. Everyone wants to, especially now there's like a little bit of a trend in the other direction, but it's still early. But if you look at the last 4 plus, maybe even 5, 6 plus years, participation trophies have been handed out, and everyone just wanted to have a piece of the cake that they really didn't get. And I like to work with people who work hard, who want excellence, who stand for excellence. And when it comes to physical fitness, there are many markers that we can look at in terms of excellence, but the vanity aspect or the outside aspect is being six pack lean, which with as much muscle mass as we can achieve.
Yeah. So what are, when we talk about, and, I don't know if I'm a huge proponent of physical performance and exercise and competing and sports and things of that nature. What do you find to be consistent markers of health in general when it comes to physical performance or anything else?
Yeah, great question. So one thing we do is looking at blood work. And when you look at your labs, and I think you've covered that as well in other podcasts that I've seen from you. When you look at labs, you can see, the inside and where someone stands and what their biology says, because you can look healthy on paper, but when you get in labs, it may be different. So looking at, for example, HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, overall inflammation, fasting insulin, very, very important, often gets overlooked. Homocysteine is another one. Their blood pressure, called the silent killer, right? Because you don't really, unless it's like really high, you don't really feel, in most cases, the symptoms. So those would be some markers there to look at. There's many more. Then you have VO2 max that seems to be a little bit more trending the last 1 2 years, um, and then how lean you are. right? We could argue that there's a ballpark range and it depends and varies from person to person, but most data that I see ranges anywhere from around 11 to 15, 16% body fat for men. And then, grip strength is another one that you can look at. Then there's the standing sitting test where you start standing, you sit down, and you should be able to stand up again without, losing balance or using your hands. Where specifically for that test, they've shown there's a strong correlation with all-cause mortality. So I would say it's not one thing, but it's a spectrum of things, looking from the inside, but also on the outside in terms of, as you said, physical fitness, strength, biomarkers, longevity markers, if you want to call them that way.
Yeah, and when you say body fat 11 to say 15%, obviously for men, and then women would be maybe something like 8% more than that. Typically, was what I would guess. But how is that determined, by the way? Because there's a lot of discrepancy between Dexa scan and hydrostatic weighing and calipers. Is there do you get into that, or does that matter? Hey, folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly.
Dexa is the gold standard. I've not seen, and when we look at the research, there's nothing that comes close to it. There's one product called the Hume scale. They claim they're very accurate, and we've used it. I personally have one with clients, and sometimes it's really almost identical to Dexa's. Typically, when your body fat percentage is higher, so 25, 30% plus. But when you've gotten really lean, let's say 15% and lower, I found the gap is usually bigger. But yeah, DEXA scan is the gold standard. So that's like the tool, or my favorite tool, to measure that. And even that is not perfect, because you go in dehydrated, very low in carbs, you get one outcome. You hydrate yourself, you can carb load, and you get another outcome, right? So there are variables there as well. But if you see the trend that's constantly within a specific range or ballpark, that will give you more clarity.
Yeah, let me just to put a finer edge on that point. When you hydrate, carb up, it's going to give you an inflated lower body fat percentage because it's going to see more water. And so it's not a true measure. It's not how really lean you are if you're just full of water, which is a trick people can do if they want to just get a better number. But I don't know if it actually means anything. And then, of course, I noticed 11%. I mean, and we see people that get much lower than that, particularly competitive physique athletes, down at 4, 5, 6%, something like that. That is, just for the record, not sustainable and generally not healthy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason to go, unless, as you said, to compete into the single digits, or if you say, hey, I've got a photo shoot, I want to be on a cover, I'm going to get there. But in most cases, it's not needed. And if we look at a lot of the benefits that we get from being leaner, they get reversed when you get into the single digits. So, like, your testosterone levels will drop, uh, cortisol will be sky high, thyroid levels will drop as well, specifically T3. So yeah, there's really no or very little benefit aside from, again, a snapshot, because it's not sustainable for most people. And people who claim, oh, I'm 8%, 7% all year long, usually it's not without the help of any drugs in most cases. Like, it's very rare that I see someone that's super lean all year long, shredded with veins over their abs, right?
Yeah, and just in the context of performing, as a CEO or another, hardworking executive, being that lean is probably not conducive to good work outcomes. Is that also fair to say?
Yeah, because you're feeling more drained energy wise. So, you feel more tired, specifically physical fatigue, even though you use more your mind or your brain, you still feel like, man, I'm physically weak. And then you have the other aspects of appetite. You're never satiated. You're always hungry when you're that low. So you constantly think about food. You can't focus. And your brain needs nutrients as well. And if you're deprived because you're keeping yourself on those low levels of body fat, it absolutely is going to have an impact on your ability to think and make decisions. Plus, the big one is sleep. Like when you're very lean, then your sleep often suffers. And if your sleep suffers, your performance will just go downhill.
Yeah, there is a clear relationship between hunger and sleep. And if you're hungry when you go to bed, you're going to wake up early to look for more food. It's hard to sleep when you're not getting adequate energy for sure. It's not an excuse to walk around at 30% body fat either. To say, oh, I don't want to. You got to get down to those reasonable. And I like those numbers you put out there, 11 to 15 for males. I think that's probably a pretty nice place for most people. Um, let me talk to you a little bit about nutrition strategy, because obviously nutrition is a huge part of being lean. I mean, it's probably the most important factor, quite honestly. How do you sort of dial that in for most people?
Yeah, we look at their labs, and when the results come back, it gives us an indication to what strategy they would respond best, whether it's more fats, more carbs, less carbs. Uh, if it should be something around low histamine or more paleo diet or whatever that looks like for that person. So if someone has, gut health issues, digestive issues, then usually something lower FODMAP, maybe cutting out. And I know you're a big fan of that or proponent of that. Maybe something more in the direction of carnivore. We've done that with people. I've done it myself, like just a pure carnivore diet. Or for other people who walk 25,000 steps a day, they play pickleball, they're at the gym 4 days a week. Again, all these activities, because they will need a lot more fuel um, in those cases, and their plan is going to look a little bit different. So the bloods and the lifestyle will determine what that looks like for from one person to the other person.
What are you seeing in the lab work which would sway you one way or the other?
So, for example, you have a blood marker called eosinophils. It's in the white blood cell section, and if that's elevated, that's an indication of, or a strong indication of, hey, there's a high histamine load. Now, when you see that, of course, you don't draw the conclusion right away. You speak with the person, say, hey, are you exposed to mold? That can be one, especially if it's very high. And a lot of times we see it. People live in Florida, a lot of humidity, a lot of mold. That is a factor there, and it opens up again a completely different conversation, and maybe even them moving or remodeling their house aside from just nutrition. That is one marker there if it's super elevated. If it's just a little bit, maybe they have seasonal allergies. So again, reducing fermented foods, avocados, tomatoes, cured meats, dry aged cheese, just foods that are high in histamine. Let's say someone is diabetic, then you want to make sure that their carb intake is limited, and also making sure they walk after meals, for example, to control blood glucose levels. Where if someone is extremely metabolically adapted, so very high cortisol, low T3, low free testosterone, very low fasted insulin, and they're hungry all the time, they're super fatigued, they've been, dieting for months before they came to us, then you kind of want to reverse diet them and increase many times the carb intake there and overall um, calories and overall fuel that they're getting.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Do you mostly practice in Mexico? Because I think you said you were there. Is this?
So most guys, that's where I'm currently located. Most guys that I work with are in the U.S., and my team is also in the U.S.
I see. Okay. And what are the ages of the people that you typically see? Is it mostly men, by the way? It sounds like it's mostly a man thing.
Yeah, 90% men, about 10% women. Average age range is between 35 to 55.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of that, yeah, 35 to 55 range. And then what about activity level? What kind of things are you trying to get people, encouraging people to do?
So one non-negotiable that we have for people to work with us is you walk 10,000 steps a day. There's no magic in that number. Again, it's more a range, but that number, we found that when someone walks 10K steps a day, their markers across the board improve. But more importantly, it's an activity level that still allows them to eat in a good amount of food versus if they barely walk and barely move, then you'll have to restrict your diet a little bit more. And I'm not a big fan of that. So that's one part. And then, sometimes zone two, whether it's zone two walking, zone two cardio, with some guys, I found like some men, even though they get down to like 14% body fat and they're very dialed in, they still have a lot of visceral fat percentage wise, proportionally, let's say on a Dexa. And in those cases, we've seen consistent results with zone two cardio, or just getting in a little bit of cardio. Other than that, there's no extra activity unless someone really enjoys it, aside from lifting weights. But I don't really count that as activity, more as strength training, unless you want to group or basket them together.
So you said visceral fat is evidenced by DEXA scan. Is that a routine thing that you do? Are you getting DEXA scans on all your clients?
Yes. Like it's not mandatory, but we say, hey, before you start a program, get one in. Let's establish the baseline. Where's your body fat percentage at? And, lean mass, bone density, visceral fat, and, also muscle symmetry to see if one side is more dominant or stronger than the other. And that gives us a good snapshot. And then we recommend they get one in every 3 to 6 months, depending on progress, to see further, to make further adjustments. Because when I initially started, it was mainly calipers and maybe the scale, but the scale doesn't tell the full story. The scale may not change, but your body composition has changed. And the calipers, they're okay if you don't have anything, but it's not as accurate because depending how hard you pinch yourself, you'll get different results. And how do you know how hard you pinch yourself last time and how much you squeezed? And I've found like the Dexa is also very motivating for people and creates a positive feedback loop for muscle growth because you don't really see it. Yeah, I'm getting stronger, but is it really muscle or is it like because I'm taking some pre-workout or something extra there? And uh, seeing that, okay, I'm getting stronger, but I'm also putting on more size consistently month after month after month is very encouraging to a lot of guys, especially once they're out of a fat loss phase and in a muscle building phase. Is this the weight that I'm gaining on the scale purely muscle, or am I just putting fat back on? And a lot of times you can see it, but sometimes, depending how your fat distribution is, you don't really see it that well. And then the DEXA will shed some light to that.
What does a typical DEXA scan cost these days? How hard is it to get?
You'll be surprised, man. Like depending which state you go, the ranges are crazy different. So if you're Miami, LA, New York, up to $300. If you're a little bit more outside, it's usually $100 to $150. So
Nice.
big cities, they just double it.
Yeah, I think everything is more expensive in a lot of the cities. The cost of living in general goes up quite a bit. Um, so as far as, well, let me ask you about you. We didn't talk too much about protein. I think it's kind of implied that you're probably. Uh, would you say you're pretty protein centric in your dietary recommendations or no?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. One keeps you satiated. Number two, especially animal protein. I'm not a big fan. Like if someone, we have some guys that are from India or Asia, and if they really like a lot of plant-based protein sources, I mean, if we can label them protein sources, but let's say plant foods that are higher in protein, so beans, lentils, they can have it. We're not going to take away their traditional dishes. It should be integrated into their lifestyle. But I'm a big fan of, you know, animal protein, specifically red meat, like something like Force of Nature, grass finished meat, no hormones, no antibiotics, and making that the base of the diet again keeps you very satiated, gives you or delivers you a lot of micronutrients, and the protein that you get there is more bioavailable. And if you're high in protein, such as 1 gram plus minus per pound of lean body mass, then you can sustain your muscle when you're cutting, and you maximize muscle growth equally when you're bulking as well.
So when people approach you and sign up for your program, 35 to 55-year-old men typically, what are most of them trying to achieve? What are do they have a particular goal, and what are they trying to get to? Are they trying to get six packs, or are they just trying to feel better?
Well, because of the name of my company, a big goal for them is to have abs. But so I would say like 75% will say, yeah, I want to have a six pack. I never had a six pack. And I only was able to lose 20, 30, X amount of pounds. But I saw the results you guys are getting, and I think I can pull this off. It's about like 70, 75%. And then the other 20, 25 are more internal rotated in terms of energy and health. So, hey, if I have abs, great. That's a nice byproduct. But for me, what is really important is having, being healthy in the most optimal health, optimizing my longevity, making sure I'm around for my grandkids, and seeing like one guy said, "Hey, I want to see my when my daughter, because he's like a little bit an older dad, and I said I want to be at the wedding and not just be there physically, but mentally and present, emotionally at the wedding of my daughter in 10, 15 years." So those are like the two main goals. Vanity, definitely a bigger one, but also health and longevity. And then you could say maybe a tiny fraction would be elite performance in terms of I'm already feeling good, but I want to take it to the next level. But I found usually those people prefer to go to telemedicine clinics or certain clinics that will have a different focus for them.
Let me one other question here. So as far as how obviously it depends on where people start, but the typical person, let's say someone is, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 pounds overweight. How long does it take them to get to a six-pack level typically?
Yeah, so there's two things. One is, as you said, your starting point. So if someone is, what I found, over 200 pounds, usually they can drop 2 pounds a week. If they're under 200 pounds, it's more one and a half, and then down to 150, 160 pounds, it's going to be more 1 pound a week, maybe less. So it depends where you start is a big one. And then, how fast your metabolism is. So if someone has a lot of muscle mass, very good thyroid function, good testosterone, very good insulin sensitivity, and good activity levels, they'll drop faster. So that is a factor as well. And obviously commitment. But let's say, just on average from all the data points we have, 1 to 2 pounds a week. So 20 pounds can be 20 weeks, can be 10 weeks, depending on the size of the person and their starting point. A better metric than just the pounds a week or body fat percentage a week. So 0.5 to 1% is like the average that we've seen. That's like the ballpark. The more body fat, specifically the more visceral fat, because that comes off significantly quicker than subcutaneous fat. The more visceral fat someone carries, the quicker they will shred it, and the heavier they are. So if you have someone 280 pounds, 5'10", 40% body fat, 8 pounds of visceral fat, they may drop 70, 80, up to 100 pounds in a year. Versus if you have someone, again, 200 pounds, needs to drop 10 pounds, it may take them 10 weeks, maybe a little bit more. It will just, those last 10 are usually the most stubborn ones, and take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, as you get closer and closer to very lean, it becomes, your body's going to fight you a little bit harder. I think that's, most people realize that. What about maintaining that? I mean, can you walk around year round with a six pack? Is that achievable for most people?
Yeah. Yeah. Once you get there, like a lot of programs or approaches don't have like a good exit strategy. It's just starving yourself to death and then it rebounds. But if you do it right, you can maintain. So there's a couple of things. One is training your abs. I know we often hear, hey, abs are made in the kitchen. That's right. That is a big key. But if you train your abs just as you train other muscle groups, they will pop out more. And we've seen that with guys who, the first time they get down, have a six pack, it's like flat, there's small lines. They start overloading their abs, let's say cable crunches, ab crunch machines, hanging leg raises, decline sit ups. They do that, and their abs will pop out more at the same level of body fat the next time they get down. So you can train that muscle. That is a big piece, because the more visible your abs are, the higher, the bigger the threshold for your body fat. So if you have very strong abs, you could walk around even 16, 17% body fat. We have a few guys like that who are 16, 17%, and you can still see their abs. Whereas if you, again, don't have strong abs, you have to cut down very low and stay there if you want to see them all year round. So that is one part. And the other part is the transition. So if you took you, let's say, 10 months to get six pack lean, and then within 2 weeks, you eat an extra 700, 800, maybe 1,000 calories more, that's going to get stored, or most of it, into fat very quickly, unless you have extreme levels of activity. So you need to transition slowly out of it. The way you went down, you want to go up slowly and overfeed your body extra calories over the course of weeks and months, and build your metabolism back up. Maybe not the most scientific term, but just to illustrate it there, just build that capacity back up. And once you get to that level, you're actually going to be able to maintain your leanness with higher calories, which gives you a bigger budget, a bigger threshold. And if you have more room for error and more to spend, it's much easier to stay there. So I like to call this process becoming obese resistant, where you reverse, you put on as much muscle mass as you can, and we have guys who are 160, 170 pounds eating 26, 27, 2,800, maybe even 3,000 calories. It's hard if you eat a lot of whole foods and, again, a lot of meat. It's hard to overeat uh, those numbers there.
Yeah, for certainly, it's easy. Conversely, it's very easy to do it when you're eating, kind of junk food. I mean, it's
Yes.
super easy and super easy to do. Well, where do people go to find out? Do you have a website, a social media handle there where people can find out more about this stuff?
Yeah, two ways. So one is sixpackceo.com, six with the letter six, packceo.com. And the other is on social. Just type in my name, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. That's where I'm most active.
Awesome, Mauro. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it, and good luck to that. And we need more people that are functioning well, and anybody that's helping society out, I'm generally happy with. So thanks for doing it. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on, Shawn.